The Plum in the Golden Vase, Chongzhen edition of Embroidered Portraits, Chapter 100. Sister Hanai encounters two troublemakers on the road. Master Pu Jing visits Brother Xiao. The poem says, the luxurious things of the past are gone, and the golden screen and golden house are in the dream. The yellow reeds remain in the evening sky, and the green grass and cold smoke lock the forbidden city. The fish lamp oil in the tunnel is exhausted, and the mirror box on the dressing table is long sealed, whose words can lead to prosperity and ruin. There is a cloud in one's sleeves and a wind in one's sleeves. It is said that Han Daoguo and Wang Li were returned to the Z family hotel. They had no daughter, so they couldn't sit still and suffer a landslide. So they sent Chen Sanner to go and hooked up the official He to continue. When official He saw that Liuer was missing from the place, he still came to Wang Liuer's house to discuss with Han Daoguo. Your daughter IG is just keeping filial piety in the house, and will know. D come out. When I sell all the goods, after asking for credit, you and I can go to our house in Huzhou to avoid having to make such a journey here. Han Daoguo said, I'm sorry to see you. After selling all the goods in one day, I asked for credit. I hired a boat and went to Huzhou with Wang Liuer, no matter what. But my beloved sister is in the house, and she and Kuiping are chaste and chaste. So the title of sister is very appropriate. During the day, I stay with Chen Mai. Brother Jin was older at that time, only 6 years old. Sister Yu, the daughter of Sun Erniang, was 10 years older and had 2 children with her, so she had little to do. Unexpectedly, since Chen Jingji's death, the garrison went out again. This spring Plum is full of delicacies every day, and its silk and brocade clothes, yellow gold, white silver, and round beads on its head illuminate everything. It's just that I can't help but sleep alone on the pillow at night. My heart is burning with desire, seeing that Lian was a good man, and just because he killed Zhang Sheng, the patrol was very cautious sooner or later. One day, during the winter moon, Lian was sleeping in the squad room. Suddenly he heard someone knocking on the back door and asked hurriedly, who is it? He only heard a shout, open the door. Lian quickly opened the door, but I saw a person rushing in and ducking behind the light. When Lian looked at it, he recognized it as the adoptive mother's golden chamber. Lian said, foster mother, what's wrong with you coming here so late? Jingui said, I'm not here privately. Grandma sent me here. Lian said, why did Grandma ask you to come? Jingui said with a smile, you're so indifferent. I'll see if you're asleep, and I'll give you something. He took a bag of clothes from his back and said, give it to you. There are a few more women's clothes in the bag for your mother. The day before yesterday, thank you for escorting the master's luggage and vehicle, and saving Grandma's life. Otherwise, Zhang Sheng would have been killed. After saying that, he left his clothes and walked out 4 steps, then turned around and said, there is one more important thing. He took out another 52 pieces of gold ingot and left it with Lian. He hesitated that night. The next time he got up early, he took his clothes and went home with his mother. The mother asked, where did this thing come from? Lian told what happened that night. The mother heard this and complained. Zhang Sheng was beaten to death with 100 sticks for doing bad things. What does it mean that he gave his things to you today? I am now 60 years old. Since I lost your father, I have only looked at you. If who can I rely on to do something? I won't go tomorrow morning. How can I agree if he calls me? If you don't go, why don't you offend me? The mother said, you can go to your uncle, Shandong Yakshaligui, and live there for a few months, and then we'll see what happens. After all, Lian is a man. The filial man followed his mother's advice, packed his luggage, and went to Qingzhou Mansion to join his uncle Li Gui. After Chen Mai saw that Lian didn't come, she asked her companion to come and call her 3, 4, or 5 times. The mother-in-law initially promised that the family would be infected with the disease, but when someone came to check on her, she told her to go to her home to ask for money. This Chen Mai is still angry and doesn't mention it. Time flies. The sun and the moon fly by, and the sun returns as early as the 12th lunar month. The weather is like the first 10 days of the first lunar month. He commanded 13,000 troops and had been stationed in Dongchang Mansion for a long time. He sent his family member Zhou Zhang to come home with a letter. The teacher moved Chen Mai and Sun Erniang, and the children of Brother Jin and Sister Yu got into the car. Zhou Zhang was left behind and said, "Dongzhuang, please ask your second master to guard the house." It turns out that the ruler also has a brother Zhou Xuan who lives in the village. Zhou Zhang was in the mansion, guarding the house with Zhou Xuan, Kuiping and sister Han Ai. Zhou Ren and his troops secured their vehicles and headed for Dongshang Mansion. "When I go, I don't leave my homeland for the sake of my reputation, but I know that I won't have to make a return trip." There is a poem saying that Shandao Zhou Tongxi is indeed a good general. At this time, the central plains were swept away, determined to swallow up the Hu. But see, robbers are rising from all directions like a mountain peak, and the sky is red with smoke and flames. When the general is angry, the world is at peace, and all the barbarians are wiped out. I have forgotten my private wishes for a long time on official business, and I don't know that I am here to serve the country. Jin restrains the sun and pays for war, and the Kilin painting is the leader. The autumn wind is strong outside Yamen Pass, and I am lying in iron clothes under the cold moon. After 20 years of hard work, he has earned his hair as beautiful as snow. The emperor clearly saw that he was more than 10,000 miles away, and he came to send a message after a lot of hard work. The golden seal hanging on the elbow is as big as a bucket, and the body is 7 feet tall. One day, Zhou Ren took his family's vehicles to Dongshang. The commander met Chen Mai, Sun Erniang, Jinj, Yuji, and all the maids and children. They had a safe journey and were very happy. He lived in the back hall of the government office. Zhou Rengxi said, "Dongzhuang invited the second master to come to the house and guard the house with the youngest Zhou Zhang." Zhou Tongxi asked again, "Why is Lian missing?" Chen Mai said, "What about Lian? Because he captured Zhang Sheng. I kindly rewarded him with 2 pieces of clothing to wear with his mother. When he arrived patrolling in the evening, he went into the back hall and put a bag of 50 taels of silver collected by his second master from Dongzhuang on the Mingjian Juo. He stole it and called him several times. Come on." He went back to his hometown in Qingzhou. "I think this guy is so unkind. I'll send someone to take him later. Don't mention Sister Han Ai either." A few days later, Chen Mai saw that the commander was discussing the military situation, doing court affairs, and was busy thinking about it. He had no time to eat during the day, because they saw Zhou Yi, the second son of Zhou Zhang from his hometown, who was 19 years old and had a handsome face and a flirtatious look. They secretly had an affair and hooked up. Morning and night, the two played chess and drank in the room, hiding it from the commander. One day, the northern kingdom of Jin destroyed the Liao kingdom. We also saw that Emperor Qinzong in Tokyo ascended the throne, gathered a large number of troops, and divided the central plains into 2 groups. The Generalissimo Nian did not drink, so he led 100,000 troops out of Jingxing Road, Taiyuan, Shaanxi, to capture Tokyo. The deputy commander-in-chief, Lieutenant General Oli, had no choice but to come from Tanzhou to capture Gaoyang Pass. The border soldiers could not resist, so they panicked Li Gang, the Minister of War, and General Zhang Shidao, who wrote the Xingyeho Pai Yeshu, and dispatched Shandong, Shaanxi, Henan, Hebei, Guangdong, and Shaanxi into 6 groups to control the troops, each relying on key areas to defend and intercept. At that time, Liu Yanqing of Shaanxi led the troops of Yansui, Wang Jin of Guangdong led the troops of Fenjiang, Wang Huan of Hebei led the troops of Weibo, Xing Xingzong of Henan led the troops of Zhangde, Yang Weizhong of Shaanxi led the troops of Zelo, and Zhou Zhu of Shandong led Qingyan. Soldiers. But when Zhou Tongxi saw the general situation, the soldiers came to seize the border, and the Ministry of War Yu Shuhuo Pai Xinghuo came, so he quickly organized his troops, fully equipped, and marched together. By the time the century horse arrived at Gaoyang Pass, Jin Guoqian's inseparable men and horses had already rushed into the pass and killed countless men and horses. It was early May, yellow sand was rising everywhere, and strong winds were blinding. The commander raised his troops to rush forward, but he was unable to prevent himself from being driven away, so he counterattacked on horseback. An arrow shot by Mo Qiu hit the throat, and he died along with the horse. The generals used hooks and ropes to grab them, but the soldiers here only snatched the corpses and kept them away from them, injuring countless soldiers. Unfortunately, once Zhou Tongxi died in battle, he died at the age of 47. Exactly, the Yu family is a loyal and good general for the country, and his blood is stained with blood. The ancients were not satisfied with their thoughts, so they composed a poem and sighed, "Victory or defeat cannot be predicted by military strategists, and safety and danger are determined by one's own responsibility." He died before leaving the army, and the setting sun and the river were extremely sad. Governor Zhang Shui saw that the commander was absent in the battle, so he quickly raised money to close the army, counted the injured soldiers, and retreated to Dongzhang. Flying to the imperial court on a starry night is no big deal. The soldiers under his command carried the corpse back to Dongzhang Mansion. Chen Mei's whole family moved the heavens with their wails. They put the coffin together and buried it, and handed over the military talisman and seal letter. One day, Chen Mei and her family Zhou Ren sent the coffin back to Qing County with no inscription. The words are divided into two parts: single cousins Kuiping and Han Aiji. Since Chen Mei's death, they have been living at home with light meals and tea, observing chastity and living their days and months. It is the end of spring and the beginning of summer. The scenery is bright, and the days are long and sleepy. The two sisters walked leisurely to the flower pavilion of the West Academy. Seeing the flowers in full bloom, the orioles singing, the scenery makes me sad. Shui couldn't help but feel calm. This sister Han I only missed Chen Jingji. She was ruthless and clueless in everything. She was sad when she saw things, and burst into tears without realizing it. When the two sisters were mourning, they saw their second master, Zhou Zhuan, coming over to persuade them. "You two sisters, if you have any worries, please ask for help. I have been having dreams for the past few days, which are a bit unlucky. I dreamed of a bow hanging on a flagpole. Go up, the flagpole is broken. I don't know if it's bad or good," said Sister Han. I'm afraid there's something going on around me." While he was hesitating, he suddenly saw his family member Zhou Ren, wearing a filial piety, walking over in a hurry. "Report, misfortune. The master is like this. He was killed at the border on the 7th day of May. The eldest grandma, the second grandma's family, and their families came with the hearse. The second master Zhou Xuan was panicked, cleaned the front hall, and parked the car. The coffin was placed with sacrifices, and the whole family started wailing. While I was tired from fasting for 7 days, the monk chanted sutras. Brother Jin and Sister Yu, wearing linen and carrying mourning, pay homage to visitors, choose a day for the funeral, and are buried in their ancestors' tombs. No need to elaborate, but it is said that the second master, Zhou Zhuan, led his 6-year-old brother Jin to write documents and petition the court, ask for sacrifices and burials, and take over the ancestral position. The imperial court surrendered tomorrow, and the Ministry of War responded with an introduction. The late Commander Zhou Zhu worked hard to serve the country, but he was not involved in the king's affairs. His loyalty and bravery are commendable. Officials were sent to sacrifice an altar, and the top of the tomb was granted the title of governor. As usual, Yizi was well raised and took over the duties of his ancestors when he was born, while the spring plum was taking care of herself. Her lust became more and more intense. Zhou Yi was often left in the Xiang Pavilion, where the sun never came out, coming and going in the morning and evening. Sexual desire is excessive, and the disease of bone steaming and tuberculosis rises. He takes medicine every day, reduces his diet, loses his energy, becomes as thin as firewood, and is greedy for sex. One day, after his birthday, it was a hot summer day in June, and he got up early in the morning. Unexpectedly, he hugged Zhou Yi in the bed. After ejaculation, cold air came out from his nose and mouth, and his vaginal fluid flowed into a puddle, and he screamed in warning. Alas, he died on Zhou Yi. He died at the age of 29. When Zhou Yi saw that he was out of breath, he panicked, stole some gold and silver items from the box, took them with him, and ran away. The maid and adoptive mother did not dare to hide, so she reported to the second master Zhou Xuan to find out. He locked up his old family member Zhou Zhang and led him to look for Zhou Yi. But suddenly something went wrong. He was walking outside the city to stay at his girl's house, and he was tied up with a rope. Knowing his situation, he was afraid of making a fool of himself. Jinj was not allowed to take up his post for a long time. He took him to the front hall and without explanation, beat him with 40 sticks and killed him instantly. Look at Brother Jin and Erniang's son. On the one hand, he mourned at his ancestor's tomb and was buried with his ruler. The two foster mothers in the room, Haiding and Yu Gui, were all sent to find their wives. Chquiping and Sister Han I were the only ones who tried to persuade him repeatedly but refused to go. One day, unexpectedly, the Jin troops robbed Bianling in Tokyo, and both the Supreme Emperor and Emperor Jinkang were taken captive to the north. The Central Plains was ownerless and desolate everywhere. Fighting broke out, and people fled. The common people in the Li family cried in despair, and the common people suffered from hanging upside down. The general army has reached the borders of Shandong. Husbands and wives are fleeing, ghosts are crying, and fathers and sons are ignoring each other. Chquiping has been taken away by his Natal family, and everyone is trying to escape with their lives. He left Sister Hanai with nowhere to rely on, so he had to pack his bags, put on his miserable clothes, left King County, and went to Linching to find his parents. When I arrived at Zi's store in Linching, the store was closed and the owner left. Not wanting to run into Chen Sanner, Sanner said, "Your parents followed Mr. He to Huzhou in the south of the Yangtze River last year." Sister Hanai held the yukon in her arms and sang little songs along the way, looking for her parents. Hungry and thirsty for food and drink along the way, staying at night and traveling at dawn, busy like a bereaved dog, hurried like a fish that slipped through the net. The bow shoes are small and it's a lot of hard work. After traveling for several days, we arrived at Suzhou. It was getting late, and we were in an isolated village. A mother-in-law, over 70 years old, was pounding rice on the stove to make rice. Sister Hanai then went forward to wish her well and said, "My family is from King County. Because of the famine, I went to the south of the Yangtze River to visit relatives. Unexpectedly, it was getting late. I have the right to let my mother-in-law stay here for a night. I will go tomorrow morning and the rent will be a lot of money." The mother-in-law thought that this woman was not a servant girl from a poor family. She was born with elegant manners and an extraordinary appearance. Because he said, "Since we are staying here, please sit on the kang while I wait for me to make rice. Some of the men who carry the river will come to eat." The old woman put the firewood stove on the kang and immediately made a large pot of rice and beans, and cut to more pieces. A large plate of lettuce was sprinkled with a pinch of salt. A few men came in, put down their spades, and asked, "Do you have anything to eat?" The mother-in-law said, "You go and eat it yourself." Now everyone takes their food and spreads it around to eat. I saw only one person inside, about 44 or 5 years old, purple face and yellow hair. So I asked my mother-in-law, who was sitting on this kang. The mother-in-law said, "This lady is from King County and went to Jiangnan to find her parents. Go and stay here for the night." The man then asked, "Madam, what is your surname?" "Sister," I said, "my family name is Han, and my father's name is Han Daoguo." The man stepped forward and asked, "Sister, what are you doing? Aren't you my niece Hanai?" "Sister," I said, "you look like my uncle Honor." The two of them hugged each other and cried, because he asked, "Where are your parents? How did you get here in Tokyo?" Sister Hanai said it all over again. "Because I was married in a garrison, my husband was gone, and I have been a widow until now. My mother went to Huzhou with He Guanren. I wanted to look for him, but there was no one to take him with me. I went alone to sing songs and find some food and clothing. I didn't want to run into my uncle here." Then Honor said, "Since your parents, when I went to Tokyo, I had no way of earning a living. So I sold my house and worked as a wife by fishing in the river. In this case, you and I will go to Huzhou to find your parents. It would be great if my uncle goes with me." He also served a bowl of rice to eat with Sister I. Sister I took a sip, but when she saw the coarse rice, she couldn't swallow it. She only sipped half the bowl and stopped eating. One night's scene has been mentioned. By the next day, when all the wives had gone, Honor paid his mother-in-law's house rent, received his Sister I's farewell, and went out to look forward to the future. Sister Han I was originally delicate, had small bow shoes, and carried a few soft hairpins and combs with her, all of which were scattered round on the road. We were about to board the ship in Huai'an and sailed to Huzhou in the south of the Yangtze River. For more than one day, we caught He Guan's family in Huzhou, looked for his parents, and met each other. Unexpectedly, He Guanren is dead, and there is no wife or children in the family. Wang Liuer is the only one, leaving behind his 6-year-old daughter and several hectares of rice fields. Less than a year later, Han Daoguo also died. Wang Liuer and Han had an old relationship, so they married his brother-in-law and lived in farming. There were children from wealthy families in Huzhou who came to propose marriage to sister Han when they saw how smart and beautiful she was. Han repeatedly taught him to get married. His beloved sister cut off her hair and eyes, became a nun, and swore that she was no longer worthy of anyone else. Later, at the age of 31, he died without illness. Exactly before the chaste bones return to 3 feet of earth, the resentful soul first reaches the 9th heaven. After Han and Wang Liuer became a couple, it was no big deal which official, family, property and land they would like to receive. The Jin army seized Dongchang Prefecture and came to Qing County. Officials fled. The city gates were closed. People fled. And fathers and sons fled. Smoke rose in the fields, and the sun was covered by yellow sand. Boars and snakes devoured each other. Dragons and tigers fought, each striving for supremacy. Black flags and red banners filled the countryside. Men cried and women wept, and thousands of households were in panic. The foreign army and the generals were like ants and bees. Short swords and long spears were like dense bamboos. Dead bodies and rotten bones were everywhere, lying in 3s and 4s. Broken knives and broken swords were piled up and broken into pieces. Everyone carried boys and girls, and every family closed their doors. 9 out of 10 houses were empty, and the villages and cities were not visible. Deer ran and rats fled, and the rituals, music and clothes were gone. It was just like how many palace ladies cried with red sleeves, and the prince walked in white clothes. At that time, Wu Yunyang saw that the foreign soldiers had arrived, and every family locked their doors and fled in panic. She inevitably packed some gold and jewelry to take with her. At that time, her eldest uncle Wu had died, so she was left with her 3rd uncle Wu, Dian, Xiaoyu, and 15-year-old Zhou Jie. They locked the front and back of their house and went to Jinan Prefecture to seek refuge with Yan Lishu. One reason was to avoid the soldiers, and the other was to complete Zhao Jie's marriage. Along the way, everyone was in a mess and everyone was terrified. Poor Wu Yunyang, wearing the clothes she had with her 2nd uncle Wu, the 5 men and women mixed in the crowd and went out of the city gate to the suburbs and ran forward. When they arrived at the intersection of Yukong, they saw a monk wearing a purple-brown cassock, holding a 9-ring staff, wearing straw sandals, and carrying a cloth bag on his shoulder with scriptures wrapped in it. He walked towards them and greeted Yu Niang, shouting, "Madam Wu, where are you going? Bring me back my disciple." Yu Niang was frightened and said, "Master, what disciple do you want from me?" The monk said, "Madam, don't assume it's just a dream. Do you remember that 10 years ago, you were driven by Yin Tiangshi to stay in my cave on the east peak of Mount Tai? I am the old monk in Zudong, with the Buddhist name Pujing. You promised me your disciple. So why didn't you give it to me?" 2nd uncle Wu said, "Master, as a monk, how can you not take the shortest path? In these chaotic times, he has to flee for his life. He has this child, who will inherit the family line in the future. Will he give you up and let you become a monk?" The monk said, "Are you really not going with me?" Uncle Wu said, "Master, you are just talking nonsense. You are delaying people's way. I am afraid that the foreign soldiers will come and we will be in danger." The monk said, "Since you are not going with me, it is getting late, and we cannot get out. Even if the foreign soldiers come, they will not come here. You should stay in this temple with me for 1 night, and leave tomorrow morning." Wu Yunyang asked, "Master, which temple is this?" The monk pointed with his hand and said, "It is on the side of the road." The monk led them to Yangfu Temple. Wu Yunyang recognized Yangfu Temple because she had been there before. When they arrived at the temple, most of the elders and monks had left, and only a few Zen monks were sitting in meditation at the back. A large sulfur glass lamp was lit in front of the Buddha, and a burner of incense was burned. It was already sunset. That night, Wu Yunang, Wu Erju, Dian, Xiaoyu, Xiaojie, 5 people, stayed at the abbot's house in the temple. The young monk recognized them and arranged some food for Yunang and others to eat. Master Pujing sat cross-legged on the bed in the meditation hall, beating the wooden fish and chanting sutras. Yu Niang, Zhao Jie and Xiao Yu slept on the bed, while Wu Erju and Dian sat together. All the people who were tired and exhausted fell asleep. Only Xiao Yu did not fall asleep. She got up and went to the abbot's room. She looked through the crack of the door to see Master Pu Jing chanting sutras. When he chanted until the third watch, he saw the golden wind was sad, the slanting moon was hazy, and there was no human habitation. There was a sea lamp in front of the Buddha, half bright and half dark. Master Pu Jing saw the chaos in the world. The people were suffering, and many people were killed in battles or unexpected deaths. He was compassionate and generous. He bowed and prayed to the Buddha, recommending the ghosts to be liberated, resolving old grievances, and letting go of their worries and go to reincarnation. He then recited the sutras and mantras for resolving grievances more than 100 times. After a while, a cold wind blew. Dozens of people with burned heads, disheveled hair and muddy faces, or broken hands and arms, or with their stomachs cut open and their hearts removed, or without heads and feet, or with necks hanging in shackles, all came to understand the Zen master's sutras and mantras and lined up on both sides. The Zen master said, "You sentient beings keep on taking revenge and refuse to let go. When will it end? You should listen to my words carefully and go to the next place." The verse says, "I advise you not to make enemies." Deep grievances are hard to resolve. A grievance made in one day cannot be resolved in 1,000 days. If you want to resolve grievances, it is like pouring hot water on snow. I have seen people who have made enemies, all tortured by grievances. I confess now, and hope everyone can fully understand their nature. When you see your original mind, grievances will naturally be resolved. Relying on the power of this sutra, you can recommend and remove all evil karma. You should be reborn and stop making grievances. At that moment, all the souls bowed and thanked them and laughed. Xiao Yu looked secretly, but she didn't recognize him. After a while, another big man came in. He was 7 feet tall, with a strong appearance, fully armored, and an arrow stuck in his chest. He called himself Commander Zhou, who was defeated in the battle with the foreign generals. "Now I am recommended by the master and go to Tokyo to be reborn as the second son of Shenjing, named Shen Shushan." Before he finished speaking, another person appeared, with a noble appearance, claiming to be Ximon King, a wealthy man in King County. "I unfortunately drowned and died. Now I am recommended by my teacher and will be reborn in the city of Tokyo as the second son of Shen Yu of the wealthy Shen Tong." Xiao Yu recognized his father and was so frightened that she could not speak. Then another person appeared, holding his head covered in blood, claiming to be Chen Jingji. "I was killed by Zhongshang, and I was recommended by my teacher for my merits. Now I am going to the city of Tokyo to be a son of the Wang family." Then another woman appeared, also holding her head, with blood on her chest. She said, "I am Pan, the wife of Wu Da and the concubine of Ximon King. Unfortunately, I was killed by my enemy Wu Song. I am recommended by my teacher and will be reborn as a girl in the Li family in the city of Tokyo." Then another person appeared, with a short stature and the blue face and back, claiming to be Wuzi. "I died because of the poison pan instigated by Wang Po. I am recommended by my teacher and will be reborn as a boy in the Fan family of Shuzhou villagers." After that, there was another woman. Her face was pale and thin, and blood was dripping. She said, "I am Li, the wife of Hua Zixu and the concubine of Ximon King. I died of a landslide due to blood poisoning. I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to Tokyo to be reborn as a daughter in the family of Yuan Chihui." After that, there was another man, who said he was Hua Zixu. Unfortunately, he was angered to death by his wife. "I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to Tokyo to be reborn as a man in the family of Zheng Qianhu." After that, there was another woman with foot straps tied around her neck. She said she was Song, the wife of Lai Wang, a member of Ximon King's family, who hanged herself. "I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to Tokyo to be reborn as a daughter in the Zhu family." After that, there was another woman, who was pale and thin. She said she was Peng Chunmai, the wife of Zhou Tongxi, who died of sex tuberculosis. "I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to Tokyo to be reborn as a daughter in the Kong family." Then there appeared another man, naked with disheveled hair and marks all over his body. He said he was Zhongshang who was beaten to death. I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to the poor Gao family in Daxingwai, Tokyo to be a son. Then there appeared a woman with a rope round her neck. She said she was Ximen King's concubine Sun Zui, who unfortunately hanged herself to death. I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to the poor Yao family outside Tokyo to be a daughter. Then there appeared another woman, young, with foot straps around her neck. She said she was the daughter of Ximen King, the wife of Chen Jingji, and the eldest sister of Ximen. Unfortunately, she also hanged herself to death. I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to the outside of Tokyo to be the daughter of the foreign servant Zhongui. I am reincarnated there. Then there appeared a young boy who said he was Zhou Yi. He was also beaten to death. I was recommended by my teacher and I am now going to the Gao family outside Tokyo to be a son. My name is Gao Yuzhuer. I am reincarnated there. After saying this, they all disappeared. Xiaoyu was so frightened that she trembled. It turned out that this monk was just talking to these ghosts. Just as she was about to tell Wu Yunyang in front of the bed, Yunyang was sleeping soundly. Unexpectedly, a spirit came with Wu Erju and other men and women, carrying 100 hu beads and a gem belt, and went to Jinan Prefecture to seek refuge with Yan Lishu, their relative. All the way to Jinan Prefecture, they asked for Yan Lishu's camp gate and reported in. Yan Lishu heard that Yunyang had come to send the bride, and they felt like old friends at first sight. After the etiquette, it turned out that the reason after his wife passed away, he asked his neighbor Wang Po to accompany Yunang. They had a rich meal in the back hall. Wu Erju and Diane were in charge of the other place. When he talked about escaping the war and marrying his wife, he gave the 100 hu beads, gemstones, and belt rings to Yan Lishu as a tea gift. Yan Lishu accepted them but did not mention the marriage. In the evening, he asked Wang Po to accompany Yunang to sleep. He talked about Yunang to test his intentions, saying, although Yan Lishu is a military officer, he is a scholar. He has been paying attention to his wife since he cut his shirt. Unexpectedly, my wife passed away and I have been a widower ever since. Now I am in control of this mountain city. Although the position is small, I can manage the army on horseback and the people on foot. Life and death are in my hands. If my wife does not abandon me, I hope we can be a happy couple. We can be a good couple and your son can also be a good match. It will not be too late to go home when the country is at peace. Yunang was shocked when she heard this and was speechless for a long time. The old lady Wang reported it to Yunli Temple. The next evening, a banquet was set up in the back hall and Yunang was invited to drink. Yunang only knew that he had married Xiaojie, so she hurried to the table to chat. Yan Lishu said, "Sister-in-law, you don't know that although I am in a mountain city here, I manage many people and horses, and I have a lot of money, clothes, gold and silver treasures, but I lack a master's wife. I have always thought about my wife, like drinking wine and thinking about coolness. I didn't expect that my wife would come to me today to marry your son. It is a marriage given by heaven. They are a good couple and can live happily here for the rest of their lives." "What's wrong with that?" Yunang was furious when she heard this and cursed. "Yan Lishu, who knew you were a dog? My deceased husband never treated you lightly, so why did you say such a dog's words?" Yan Lishu smiled and walked forward, hugged Yunang, and begged, "My wife, why did you come to me from your own home? Since ancient times, door-to-door business has been easy to do. I don't know why. As soon as I saw you, my soul was captured by you. There is no way, at least it is done." He took the wine and drank with Yunang. Yunang said, "You call my brother in front. Wait for me to talk to him." Yan Lishu smiled and said, "Your brother and Diana, the servant, have been killed by me." He immediately ordered his attendants, "Bring the thing and show it to my lady." After a while, under the lamplight, the bloody heads of Uncle Wu and Diane were brought up. Yunang was frightened and turned pale, crying and falling to the ground. Yan Lishu came forward and hugged her. "My lady, don't worry, your brother is dead. You will marry me. I am a general, and I will not defile you." Yunang thought to herself, "This thief killed my brother's family. If I don't obey, I will lose my life too." She turned her anger into joy and said, "You must obey me, then I will marry you." Yan Lishu said, "It doesn't matter what. I will do it." Yunang said, "You finish the marriage with my child first, and I will marry you." Yan Lishu said, "It doesn't matter." At the same time, He called Miss Yin out and pushed Xiaojie together, drank the wedding cup, tied the knot of love, and became husband and wife. Then he pulled Yu Niang to make love with him. Yu Niang refused, and Yan Lishu was furious and scolded. "Bitch, you tricked me into marrying your son. And you dared to laugh at me for not being able to kill your child?" He raised the sword to the bedside and fell casually, and blood splashed a few steps away. It was exactly the 3-foot sharp knife hit her neck, and her heart was wet with blood. Yu Niang screamed when she saw Xiaojie being killed. She didn't want to let go and woke up, but it was just a dream. She was so scared that she was sweating all over and her body was full of saliva. She kept saying, "Strange, strange." Xiaoyu was beside her, so she asked, "Why is grandma crying?" Yu Niang said, "I just had a dream that was not clear." She had to tell Xiaoyu again. Xiaoyu said, "I was not asleep just now. I quietly opened the crack of the door and saw that the monk had talked with the ghost all night. My father, Liu Niang, Chen's husband, Zhou Xiaobai, son Zue, Lai Wang's daughter-in-law, and my eldest sister who just passed away came to talk. And then they all dispersed." Yu Niang said, "I saw that he was buried behind the temple. How could the souls of the dead not come in the quiet night?" The women replied, and before they knew it, it was 5 o'clock in the morning and the cocks crowed in the morning. Wu Yunyang washed her face and went to the meditation hall to worship Buddha and burn incense. She saw Master Pujing shouting on the meditation bed, "Mrs. Wu, how can you realize it?" Yunyang knelt down and worshipped, "Master, I am a disciple Wu, with mortal eyes, and I don't know that the master is an ancient Buddha. I have realized it in a dream just now." The teacher said, "Since you have come to your senses, there is no need to go. If you go, it will not be any more than this. Otherwise, 5 people will have lost their lives. Your son has the chance to meet me because of the good roots you have planted in your daily life. Otherwise, you would have been separated from your family. At the beginning, your late husband Simon King did evil and was not a good person. This son turned to your family and wanted to squander his wealth and property. When he died, his body and head would be buried in the place of Yijing. Now I have saved him and made him my disciple. As the saying goes, if one son becomes a monk, 9 ancestors will ascend to heaven. Your husband's injustice has been explained, and he can also be reborn. If you don't believe it, follow me and I will show you." So he stepped forward and came to the abbot's room, only to see Xiaojie still sleeping on the bed. The teacher pointed the Zen stick at his head and asked Yu Niang and the others to look. Suddenly he turned over, and it was Simon King, with a heavy yoke around his neck and an iron chain around his waist. He pointed the Zen stick again, and it was still Xiaojie sleeping on the bed. Yu Niang burst into tears when she saw him, because Xiaojie was Simon King's reincarnation. After a long time, Xiaojie woke up. Yu Niang asked him, "Why did you follow the master to become a monk?" She shaved his head in front of the Buddha and received the blessing of the master. Poor Yu Niang held him and cried bitterly. She had raised him all her life. When he was 15 years old, he was expected to inherit the family business. But he was transformed by this teacher. Wu Erju, Xiaoyu, and Dian were also very sad. At that time, this teacher Pujing took Xiaojie and gave him a Dharma name, Mingwu. He said goodbye to Yu Niang and laughed. Before leaving, he told Yu Niang, "You don't have to go to the future. Now the foreign troops will soon retreat, and the north and south will be divided into 2 dynasties. There is already an emperor in the central plains. In less than 10 days, the war will be over and the place will be peaceful. You can go home and live your life in peace." Yu Niang said, "Master, you have taken the child away. When will my mother and I meet again?" She pulled him and burst into tears. The teacher said, "Don't cry, my lady. There is another teacher coming over there." Everyone turned their heads and disappeared. It is just like 3 times in the world, no one knows, flying over the Taedong Peak. Let's not talk about Master Pujing's transformation into Xiaojie. Let's talk about Wu Yunyang and her second uncle Wu and others who stayed in Yangfu Temple for 10 days. As expected, the great Jin kingdom established Zhang Bangchong in Tokyo and proclaimed himself emperor, appointing civil and military officials. Hizong and Shenzong went north, and King Kang crossed the river on mud horses and ascended the throne in Zhengkong. becoming Emperor Gaozong. He appointed Zongzi as the general and recaptured Shandong and Hebei. It was divided into two dynasties. The world was peaceful, and the people resumed their work. After Yu Niying returned home, she opened the door and did not lose any of the family property. Later, he changed Dian's name to Ximen King and inherited the family business. People called him Ximen Shaoyuanwei. He raised Yu Niying until she was old and died at the age of 70. This was the reward for her kindness in reading scriptures. There is a poem to prove it. Fan read the will and felt lost. Who knew that the law of nature would return? Ximen Hao's tyranny was hard to have an heir. Jingji was crazy and would be annihilated. Lu Yu was kind and lived a long life. Ping Mei was promiscuous and died early. It's strange that Jin Lian suffered a bad retribution, and her bad reputation has been passed down for thousands of years. The whole book is finished.